Oh my goodness. Guilty. They found the police officer who probably created the defining trauma moment in 2020, guilty on all charges. You know, today was a crazy day. I was actually teaching a course and I got a text message from somebody saying the verdict is in. They're gonna announce it any minute. And as I heard that news, I have multiple screens in my setup here, and I pulled one of the screens, I put on CNN, and I'm teaching the course, and then they announced guilty on all three counts, and I can't believe it. Like, I'm absolutely, even now, like, I'm shocked that it has happened. I am elated. It's funny. It's like I'm not celebrating. I would never celebrate anybody going to prison, even for something like what he was just found guilty of. But the experience of justice is profound, and I want to tell you why. I want to take a moment to tell you why this matters to us, why this matters to our clients, and in fact, why it matters to the world. Last week, I went on a journey. If you've been following me on social media, you followed that I went on a journey with my friend and colleague, Dr. Adam Frower, and we went to different places that are historically relevant for the civil rights movement here in America. And one such place that we went was a place called Glendora, Mississippi. And Glendora, Mississippi is the site where Emmett Till was tortured and murdered and then later found. Glendora, Mississippi is one of the toughest places I have ever been. It was hard being in Glendora, Mississippi. And we had the opportunity to talk to residents of Glendora, Mississippi. We had the opportunity to talk to the mayor of Glendora, Mississippi. And one of the things that shocked Adam and I is the Emmett Till assassination took place in 1955. And one of the things that shocked us is when we were talking to the mayor of Glendora, Mississippi, that community is still impacted by what happened in that town. That community to this day, that happened in 1957. That is nearly 70 years ago. And that community is still impacted by what happened. And as we interviewed people, we realized they are not just impacted by the grotesque murder itself, but they are also impacted by the fact that there has been no justice or accountability for that murder. That community still lives with the fear and angst that a white person can come into their community and kill a black person and get away with it. I don't know if you guys know the stories, but they know the story of what happened, but the two men accused of this murder were tried, and they were found not guilty. They were acquitted. But because of double jeopardy laws here in America, you can't be retried. So they later sold their story to something called Look Magazine, and in that interview, they admitted that they were the murderers, but nothing can be done. Think of the trauma and tragedy that brings to the community of Glendora, Mississippi. They still live today in 2021 with the fear that someone can come into their community, commit a murder, and get away with it. Not because the murder was grotesque, which it was, but because that grotesque murder went unaccountable. Like, no one was held accountable for that murder. Justice evaded the people of Glendora, Mississippi, and you can hear it in their voices. You can see it in their eyes. The community itself is impacted. The community itself is fearful. The community itself lives with trauma and pain because they watched this happen to someone from their community, and they watched it go unpunished for 6 decades and more. That murder will forever go unpunished. So when this happened, when we watched a man have his life taken because a police officer was kneeling on his neck, the entire black community, but this time not just in one location like Glendora, Mississippi, but I mean the entire black community experienced that trauma. and have been watching this trial over the course of the last couple of weeks with the fear that this event is going to go unpunished, that no one will be held accountable for this event. This event will go similarly to how previous events have gone, including Emmett Till back in 1955. The fear is a fear that all of the African Americans can associate with and can understand. And for me, I truly feared that I was going to watch this man acquitted, and there was going to be a generational trauma, similar to what happened in Glendora, except it would be all around the country. A generational trauma where people would fear that the police can overstep their boundaries, can step outside of their training and take your life, and it's not meaningful. One of the things that we learned as we went on this incredible journey last week is the civil rights movement wasn't just a movement about equality. It was a movement about being recognized as a human. It was a movement of being recognized as a man. Have you guys seen those signs where people protesting had signs that said, "I am a man"? Like, do you understand that there was a time in the not so distant past in America where black people were not recognized as human beings? The civil rights movement was to help people recognize black people as human beings, because we all understand that human beings deserve justice. If black people are viewed as property, similar to cattle is what they were compared to back in those days, then it's easy to commit injustices. But if we can recognize black people as human beings, then it's easier to give those people justice and equality and equal rights. And it was wonderful to see George Floyd being treated like a human being, because the man who took his life was held accountable for having done so. Now, the reason I say this is relevant to us, it's relevant to all of us, because we need to have a community where accountability happens when someone takes a life. But the other reason why is because sometimes your clients are going to come into your office with generational trauma. Sometimes your clients are going to come into your office with the impact of previous generations' trauma. But it's not just the incident, it's also the absence of justice since. So I'm so excited that we don't have to live with the generational trauma that would have occurred had this man not been held accountable. So look, this is a big day, this is a big deal, this is a big moment. And I want you guys to understand how big of a moment it is and why. Because our job as healing professionals is to help people to be their best selves and to heal from their pain. And I want you to understand that sometimes pain is generational, and what happened today will help the next generation feel as human. It'll help the next generation not carry that generational trauma with them. And hopefully this is the first of many. Like, justice can't just happen in a one-off. It can't just be a snapshot. It can't just be a one-time thing. This needs to be backed up by more convictions. This needs to happen by more people being held accountable. We need to reinforce the message that black people are human beings, and thus we can't take their lives without accountability. But for now, this is a really big moment, and it is time for us to recognize the step that was taken today and why that matters for an entire community of people. And in fact, I actually think it matters for all of us. So thank you guys for listening to me. Like, I love y'all, man. Like, this is a big deal. The world is changing around us. I remember when George Floyd's murder happened in 2020, I drove to Chicago. My mom's the mother of three black men. And I know, just like every other mother of black men, my mother worried about what might happen to her children. My mother worried about her children being out in the world and interacting with police and authorities. And I wanted my mom to know that I was okay. And it wasn't good to fly back then, so I got in a car and I drove so I could hug my mom and be around my mom and let her know that her black son was healthy and okay. And fast forward now to April 2021, and that event has come full circle, and the officer in that horrible video has been held accountable for that murder. And it just makes me feel like we're making a step in the right direction in recognizing that black life is life. that black people are people, and that black people, their lives do matter, and they deserve justice. So if you guys see or know black people, if you are a black person out there, like, understand it's okay to have generational trauma. Like, we've been through a lot as a community and as a people. And if you're not black and you know a black person, like, understand we've been going through a lot for a really, really long time. So for us, this is a big day and a big moment.